Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's a gorgeous day, and the Thomas Jefferson Report has this to say. It's an ice cold day here, 72 degrees. After 89 and 90 something. I don't know what the weather's like for the weekend, but it's glorious. And I'd say the wind's at about 3 miles an hour, so there's a breeze. And it's a wonderful day. Now, I know before I spoke about magic moments, and it's rare that you have more than one magic moment in a trial. But Hope Hicks testified today, and I think that she ended the defense of the case. You may be familiar with the play Sartre's No Exit. I think this is a translation from that having to do with our eternity, and that hell is other people, and that for Trump, other people pointing the finger at him being loyal to the truth when he was so disloyal to them presents a very interesting artistic revision of this slummy trial going on in the lower Manhattan. So, who was Hope Hicks? Hope Hicks was the campaign press secretary in 2016 for the Trump campaign. And among other things, and instead of burying the lead, I'm going to go right to the meat of it. One of the last things that Hope Hicks, who was favored highly by Trump, not only for being so attractive, but also for being so capable, she said that he multitasked and he could do all these things. But when they talked about the fallout from Hollywood Access, the tape that was involved, that he said it was better that it came out after the campaign than during the campaign. In other words, one of the two prongs of the prosecution are now done, in my opinion. Number one, they had to show the documents were not legit, and they're doing that, and they've done that already. The second thing they have to show, in order for the use of those documents, the false documents, has to be in connection with the violation of another crime. And in this case, there's a state election law about promoting a candidate, in this case with false documents, promoting him by concealing evidence that compromises him. And Trump said to Hope Hicks that it's a good thing that this material didn't come out during the election. Now, the tension between the prosecution and the defense has been the government has the goods, and the defense is trying to say that, oh, those documents, what he didn't know about them and stuff like that. Well, we see his signature and we have these conversations, and we went over a tape in which no less than Cohen had made with Trump, in which they're talking about how they're going to finance the payout. So day by day, there are nails being driven into Trump's metaphorical criminal case coffin. And Hope Hicks today gave testimony that will last through the weekend when the jury meditates individually upon what it heard and how powerful it was to hear from a person, Hope Hicks, who was genuinely loyal to Trump. And here she is. Now, she confirms several phone calls that are critical in the matter. And she knew that the Access Hollywood matter was a really big thing. Because there were people about the Access Hollywood people that were off the wall, party people, public officials, and everybody. They knew it was a serious problem. And yet, she, when asked about it as the press secretary, in the beginning, they denied. They didn't have a basis to deny it. Trump knew it was true, but Trump wanted to dispute the fact that they only had text. And the reporter forwarded the tape later in the day, and then they had to confess that it was Trump. It was his voice. He had lied among the campaign members. And so then they had to come up with a bullshit story. And the bullshit story that they had to come up with was, locker room talk, and didn't mean anything. And you'd be hard-pressed to find an American man anywhere that ever heard anybody say that in any locker room or any place else. The trouble with Trump is that he doesn't exist with the rest of humanity. He rushes from one lie to the next. But another thing happened with Hope Hicks that is interesting, because you have to consider the fact, though she's held in high regard because she's attractive, her youth, 4 years out of college, she's working for Trump. Some people described it as a great job. How could it be a great job? This guy was a criminal in other ways before he was in the White House. But anyhow, that's the profile that we have of Hope Hicks. And I think that a young lady or a man, given an opportunity like that, to be in a large, seemingly successful business, then goes to the White House with Trump, has been in a pretty heady place for a young age. Now, that may bespeak of her right to be considered somewhat innocent. But let's face it, she was in the middle of this. She compromised her own soul for this. She did care about Trump. And after she finished her direct, when the cross was beginning, she sat there and she cried. The shame that came upon her must be enormous. Her affection for Trump, which I don't think's been erased by all of this, must be overwhelming. To be speaking in a public courtroom at a trial at her age or any age is an enormous act. And it's like it all washed over her all of a sudden when she had done her part, meaning she spoke the truth and knew what the implication was. There's not a person following this case that doesn't think this is huge, because she had that conversation alone with Trump. She could have overlooked it, meaning buried it, but she didn't. Now, she was interviewed by prosecutors some time back, and I assume she may have testified in the grand jury. If she testified in the grand jury, she received immunity by the fact of appearing. That's the law in New York State. So the only prosecution perhaps they could make of her would be if she perjured herself at the trial. But still, some people lie smartly, meaning they can't be found out. And a conversation with Trump in which he's never going to talk about it, she did talk about it. So I think we have to give her credit, though her life, her professional life, may be ruined. But in the end, sitting in a trial, under oath, asked about the same things, she told the truth. And with that, I believe there's no exit for Trump. You just stick the fork in. And I'd be surprised if the trial went longer than a week and a half. Because consider who's left. Now they may, when they get, Stormy Daniels and McDougal on the stand and Cohen, they, the defense, may go on at some length on cross. Now another thing happened at the beginning of the court, and it was Trump had said at one of his hallway press conferences with his lawyer standing to his left, he had said, under the gag order, not only can I not speak and defend myself, I can't testify at the trial. Turned to his lawyer, and his lawyer nodded agreement in response to Trump saying to him, isn't that right? And the lawyer said, yeah, that's right. Is there anybody that can preserve their dignity and their honesty when they get within propinquity of Trump's majestic evil? This lawyer gave up a practice, supposedly got $3 million, set up a new practice, and he has one client, and he's acting terribly as a lawyer in two ways. One, objectively, he knows the answer to that question in the hallway should have been, no, you get a right to testify, and no matter what the gag order's about. And secondly, he visibly acceded to what Trump wanted when, as a lawyer, he knew that that was not true. The judge, very sharply in court, said, I understand there's some misunderstanding perhaps about the significance of the gag order. The gag order basically applies to things said outside the courtroom that, if violated, can result in sanctions. But inside the courtroom, you're free to testify or not if you choose. It's a right that you have. It doesn't go away. It has nothing to do with the gag order. So the judge laid that out. If the jury is as attentive as courtroom observers have said, taking notes and stuff like that, there doesn't appear to be an exit for Trump. Early on, before we had this evidence before us and knew some of the things, the tapes, the documents, the Hope Hicks testimony, although there were rumors about what you might say, I said this might be a slow plea, meaning that we were going to spend weeks getting to the same point we would get to if Trump stood up in court and said, yeah, I did that. Or cut a deal with 10 counts, or a deal not to go to jail, or, any number of things. There's no evidence there were any such conversation. I don't think Trump would allow it. And I think Trump's going to be hard-pressed to use this conviction, if that's still his game, to show he's a victim and a martyr. Because if you just, say, scan the news stories on Hope Hicks today, there is hardly an outlet on the planet that is not talking about the concession that Trump made to Hope Hicks that hangs him. So, that's one story. There's in my opinion, another funny story. It's not really funny, but it fits. Kristi Noem, as you know, the puppy assassin, has admitted to this in a book she wrote. And it turns out that in the book, she also claimed that she met with Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. Nah, didn't happen. Isn't that perfect? Some people say you can go around and lie. Well, I don't believe it. I don't think it should be encouraged. I don't think it should be said. But we have these politicians particularly who are lying a lot these days and not getting away with it. They're not very good liars. I'm glad for that, because we can find them out. You may remember how we used a drone, the United States did, to kill what we claimed was a Syrian And it turns out, instead what we did was we killed a shepherd. Literally, a shepherd. I've never been comfortable with the notion of a drone shot to hit a single person somewhere. I'm not comfortable with war generally, I suppose, or specifically, but this is an example. What kind of intelligence did they have that they were getting some high-level bad guy and they end up killing a shepherd? It's really something. Lastly, I have an enviro comment. Years ago, I was attending a fair, and I was going to make a TV appearance at the fair. And on my way to where the station was located, I came across two tables, one by the other. One was an environmental table, and they were talking about the threat of global warming. The other table was a, I guess, real estate vendor who was selling property on the Outer Banks. And I said to him, I think you should be encouraging people to rent instead of buy, because the waters are rising, and what is today's shoreline won't be there tomorrow, it'll be underwater. And he didn't dispute it, but he wanted to say it would take a long time. Now, what is the effect of water rising? Well, for one thing, the obvious one is floods. Another is that when you raise the water level of the ocean or sea, and the clouds can hold so much more water because of the warmth that allows the clouds to hold that water before it's released as rain. And if the clouds hover over a piece of property, as happened in Texas years ago, the result is disastrous. Now, there's been a study, and I'll attach the picture, showing that from 2010 to now, the water's been rising anywhere from 2 inches to 8 or 9 inches in the Gulf of Mexico and along the East Coast. And the higher numbers are in the south, which makes sense. And the higher numbers in the south are problematic in a variety of ways. So, for example, and I think Gore was in Miami when I saw a video of this, so I'll describe it. We have waste pump lines in Florida and elsewhere, and they pump out the waste through these pipes, and the pipes sit above the water, okay? So, what's the problem with that? As the water has risen, it's covered those pipes, so then the water can be pushed back into the inhabited area. That's a disaster. And there were pictures of Gore in one of the videos I saw, standing there with the water up to his ankles and knees because of this phenomenon. Now, there have been ways to try to deal with that. You might say to raise the pumps, and that is, rather raise the pipes so that they're above the water. The other one is to set up the pipes so that, like a diode, D-I-O-D-E, the water, like electricity, can only go in one direction, which is out and not in. But these are temporary measures. Another thing that happens is these waters have salt, and so when they encroach on waterways, because they've risen and now merge with fresh water, that it affects agriculture. Agriculture doesn't do well on land with salted water. So, if you're thinking of retiring to that wonderful house by the shore, get it inland. And the longer and further that you can get it inland, so that it'll be there while you can use it, the better. But probably, just like I told that friendly realtor years ago, you should rent, not buy. That's the problem. So, pretty good news today. Trump is on the ropes. I think it's a question of time. But having said that, life will surprise you, good and bad. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So I say goodbye to you today from our cathedral of trees. It's just gorgeous here today. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.